Welcome in, everybody, to the Week 2 conversation of the G5 Beat. Josh Jones, Baker Lloyd, John Duncan here, ready to get started talking about Week 2. Guys, before we, dive into the conversation, I just want to say, shocking news that hit college football this weekend, and I know it's going to have, a ripple effect throughout. Randy Edsall is no longer the coach at UConn.
I love that. So he was going to retire. So he announced, was it Saturday or Sunday, that he was going to retire, and now all of a sudden he's like, okay, I'm just not going to coach anymore. If anybody, and I know UConn's not G5, but this is definitely worth mentioning that I don't know if y'all saw the video from Saturday's game against Holy Cross. Is that he puts his fist up, all right, come go team, let's finish this game out. But nobody puts their fist up. They just ignore him. And that's just, it sucks for that UConn program, but it really is just how it is right now for the Huskies.
I feel like I just had to bring that up because, they can't catch a break, I feel like. So, no surprise there. Hopefully they can get that thing turned around. But I figured I'd mention that.
Does that sound like a push out, possibly?
Oh, for sure.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
He's just done a terrible job at
retiring to getting the can within like a day. That sounds.
I think they're just trying to get some kind of energy, some kind of spark, and maybe salvage what little recruiting they have.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. That is definitely what it seems like. Now, when you said a ripple effect throughout the college football universe, my first reaction, and this is really sad, but I thought you were talking about that stupid Applebee's commercial that everybody just keeps talking about.
Gosh, I don't even want to give, dude. That was my worst of the weekend. Was that damn Applebee's commercial that came on every other commercial, and
terrible,
horrible. And as much as I hate it, I can't get that song out of my head, man.
Oh, I know,
I have an Applebee's like 2 minutes from my house, and every time I drive by, I just do X-rated things towards it. So.
Yeah, I could care less for Applebee's. I haven't been in years, and I don't plan on going for years. But hey, I guess the commercial did what it's supposed to.
Yeah, that's
talking
true.
About them, so.
All right, guys. Well, real quickly, we can start recapping the Week 1 games that we covered last week. We have Appalachian State 33 defeat ECU 19. I can't talk again today. Appalachian State taking down the ECU Pirates. I know, Baker, you're at that game. Boise State 31, UCF 36. That was also a very good game. I thought Boise was going to pull that one out. UCF came back towards the end. Louisiana 18 versus Texas 38. The game was not as close as I thought it would be. And then South Alabama 31 versus Southern Miss 7.
Ugh.
Oh,
can we start on that one? I definitely anticipated the Will Hall. We all talked about how we thought Southern Miss was going to come in to Mobile and get the win over South Alabama. And they'll give South Alabama a lot of credit. Those guys look good. They looked well coached and ready to play. And on the other side, Southern Miss just didn't execute. They looked awful, turning the ball over left and right. Offense, receivers dropping easy passes. It was ugly for the Golden Eagles. It went nothing like I anticipated. And I hope they can hurry up and get things together, or we're going to talk about another bad year for Southern Miss. So, were you guys able to get eyes on that game? Because I was not impressed at all by what I saw.
I wasn't. I kind of kept an eye on it. I didn't watch it intently. I know. Southern Miss got up first. They scored first. They had 7 points in that first quarter, and then just got shut out from there. Trey Lowe had 2 interceptions. He didn't look the greatest.
Yeah.
It just, to your point, John. It really boils down to execution. That's really about it. They couldn't really do anything throwing the ball. They had over 100 yards on the ground, but they couldn't throw the ball. And when you make a team one-dimensional like that, you have no shot.
No, and you go back and look at Will Hall's offenses that he's had in the past. Even go back to Tulane. They, for the most part, executed on a week in and week out basis. I don't know if this was just nerves or what from the Southern Miss program, but they just looked all out of sorts.
I'm telling y'all, I don't think Trey Lowe's the guy there. I think they need to go with a different quarterback.
Yeah.
I don't know if he just doesn't have anything in the stable that he's comfortable with, but I know he had a couple of guys there. But let me tell you this, like, I think South Alabama, I know I mentioned last week, they were going to try to, do the reverse of what you normally see and open up the run game by passing because, I mean, their pass game is pretty solid. But Jake Bentley, man, like, he might be back. He might be for real. He was 17 to 22 for 269 and 2 touchdowns. So he was on the ball the other night. So we'll see what he does with him this year.
Very efficient. They could not run the ball, though. They only had 31 yards on the ground. So a takeaway for them to work on, but still, Jake Bentley looked great.
Yeah, Southern Miss defensive line looked as good as we expected, but it's just on the offensive side of the ball for Southern Miss. They've got a lot to figure out before getting into Conference USA play. But real quick, talking about the App, I want to talk about the App State and ECU game. Baker, I know you were there. That score, final score was a little closer than what it really was. I mean, App take away that first touchdown that ECU had. I mean, ECU couldn't do anything on the offensive side of the ball, and App just ran it down their throat pretty much the whole game. I mean, it was 33-9 at one point, and App kind of took the foot off the gas pedal, and ECU clawed their way back to make it somewhat respectable. But I mean, that game was pretty much all App, and just good for App State in that program.
And there were some plays that could have swung it, different ways, both sides. You had the Hail Mary at the end of the first half that, they called an interception after initially calling a touchdown. Holton Ahlers had a long run called back. I mean, App had a touchdown to a tight end where he didn't drag his foot. So, I mean, there was some plays like that. But, yeah, all in all, it was fun. Good game, good attendance there, fun matchup. It was almost like a bowl, to be honest. So, good time.
Yeah, it looked like a good atmosphere, on TV, especially at that Duke's Mayo Bowl Classic. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about this Louisiana and Texas game.
Man.
I know. I hate it for Billy Napier. I mean, they played hard, but you could just tell Steve Sarkisian was like, I've got to win this game. I can't lose my first game as a head coach. And that's exactly, kind of what the Texas team mentality was. They came out and just kind of hurried up and pushed, Louisiana away. And, Louisiana kind of struggled doing what they've done well, especially last year under Billy Napier. But, I mean, I still think, Louisiana is going to be a force to be reckoned with in the Sun Belt. And, I mean, you lose to a great team like Texas. There's no shame in it, just got to move on. And, you got some other big non-conference games coming up. You got, one we'll talk about next week in Ohio, but also you've got Liberty. So you've got some other matchups to, improve on it. And then you've got a very tough Sun Belt slate coming up too. So hate it for Louisiana, but definitely don't count them out.
Yeah, don't count them out, no, for sure. And I think, like you said, John, going into that game, I mean, Sark had so much to lose if he didn't win that game. So, I mean, I think he put a lot of energy in making sure they won that game.
Definitely. Well, the last game we previewed was Boise State and UCF, and that game did not go like me and Baker thought it would go. We thought UCF was going to run Boise out of Orlando. So Josh kind of gets credit for that game. They kept it. Boise kept it close. In fact, they jumped out to a big lead. I believe it was 21-0 and then 28-7 or something like that. And then, UCF clawed back and had the biggest comeback, I believe, in school history, but definitely Gus Malzahn's biggest comeback as a coach. So good for UCF and finding a way to get that W over Boise.
But one thing I want to say on that game is that for the UCF fans is just familiarity that, we have with
Gus Malzahn.
Gus, he's going to have to be careful with Gabriel. I feel like if he keeps running him a lot, he's going to get him hurt. But Gus's offense has always worked best with a running quarterback. So, I mean, it was really going to be durability will be tested. And with as much focus as Gus likes to put running the ball, I think a lot of the question going into that game was, is Gus going to modify his offense based on the players they have, or is he going to kind of just come in and do his thing? And, I think after looking at it, I think there's still some things to be determined, but I still think they're just going to put more focus on running the ball and running it with the quarterback. So I would just say that would be my biggest concern coming out of that game.
You guys think the way that game played out kind of says more about UCF or says more about Boise?
To me, I thought Boise kind of played how I expected them to play, to be honest. I thought they played well, and given the fact that Gus likes to run the ball, and I felt like the heart of that team on the defense side of the ball is the defensive line. Granted, they gave up 250 yards on the ground. I thought would kind of slow UCF down. So I think it's more of a testament of the kind of the offense that Gus is going to have down there in Orlando. But I think traveling across the country to play at UCF, I think they're going to have to find a way to run the ball. They're going to have to. I mean, Bachmeier, he's serviceable, he's good, but if they can't run the ball better than what they did, they're going to have struggles later on.
Well, speaking of running the ball, I thought Bowser for UCF had a hell of a game. He looked really good, and goes back to that Gus Malzahn offense. They ran him like almost 30 times Thursday night. But I mean, at the end of the day, they got the W for UCF. And Orlando, welcome to the show at the Gus Bus. There were some boo birds already in the second quarter of that game, but hey, Gus Malzahn pulled it out, so you got to ride that bus down to the station with the Gus Bus. But yeah, definitely looking forward to see where both of these programs go for the rest of the year. But speaking of UCF, guys, we're going to hit on this real quick before we go over our hashtag G5 over P5 victories from week 1. But big announcement this weekend that UCF, Houston, and Cincinnati are being invited to the Big 12, and they should submit a formal application to be taken into the Big 12 sometime this week. And rumors are that they will be pretty much a done deal later in the week when they vote on when the Big 12 votes on letting these 3 teams in. What are your guys' just real quick thoughts on UCF, Houston, and Cincinnati? I guess I'll give mine real quick. I'm not shocked. I mean, these 3 teams, we knew they've been talked about in conference expansion in the past. I mean, you go back a couple years ago when Big 12 was thinking about expanding, then these schools were all in the mix to join the Big 12 before they were ultimately decided, no, we'll just stay at where we're at. But they are going. But I guess, what does this mean for the American Conference? And Baker, I want to hear your thoughts first, but buddy, I can kind of sense that there might be a little App and UAB action conference mates going on in the future. What do you think about that, bud?
Man, you never know. Hey, I'd love to have a game with your boys.
Let's go,
see
man.
You guys every year here, but
yes.
Hey, listen, it's to me the first thing that I think of when I see this is, I've been thinking who's going to be the one that's left out if BYU gets the call, and it looks like it's going to be Memphis, which is it's sad for Memphis in a way because they've got a really good basketball program, they've got a good football program. I hope they don't start going downhill at this point. It doesn't kill them, but I get what they're doing. The Big 12. I mean, listen, all of those schools have good media markets, good athletics, like good stadiums, good facilities all around, and good fan bases. Let's just be honest. So, I mean, they're just good programs. It's the top of the top from the American. So I understand they're very appealing.
Definitely. And I mean, this is with no insider information at all, but honestly, like the top teams, I can see at least the top 3 teams getting the invite from the AAC if all goes as planned, and UCF, Houston, and Cincinnati are making that jump from the AAC to the Big 12. In my opinion, don't kill me, guys, if you're listening, but I think it's UAB, App State, and Marshall. I think those are the 3 teams right now that I can see them going for, first to help fill those 3 spots in the American. But there's some other teams, you've got Georgia State, you've got Charlotte, you've got Louisiana, you've got, you can go down the list. You can pretty much make an argument for 20-something teams, really, if you wanted to. And we've seen that, guys, on message boards already. Everybody's saying, well, our team should go. But I really think it boils down to, the top 3 teams, in my opinion, right now is UAB, App, and Marshall. So we'll just have to monitor this and see what happens. Josh, do you have any quick thoughts on that before we move on?
No, I mean, there's really nothing else I can add to that. I mean, like you said, it's not that big of a surprise. I think everybody kind of saw that coming. And who will the AAC replace them with? I really do think Louisiana would be a good fit there. But I do think, the teams you mentioned, UAB, App State, Marshall, I think are definitely the top contenders. I think it would be interesting to see Louisiana and the AAC given the market they're in. And,
right.
something else. No, I mean, they just raid the top end of the AAC, and I do hate it for Memphis. They didn't get that invite too, because I really would have liked them in the Big 12. I felt like they would fit well in the Big 12, but no, other than that, no shocker here. No news, nothing new from me.
Real quick, what do you think about Houston getting the call after initially it came out that there was a lot of hesitance from the Big 12 about Houston after the last go around, how they maybe had some issues with one of the famous donors from Houston there?
Well, another thing that intrigues me about Houston though is because you've kind of heard the rumor that the Pac-12 is kind of flirting about adding Houston too, and to me, I mean, I'd almost rather go to the Pac-12 if I'm Houston, just because you have a little more certainty that you do with the Big 12 right now. Because the Big 12, I mean, after this media deal's done, I mean, do they really think they'll be able to get as good as a deal as they've had in the past with Texas and Oklahoma in that conference?
I think that's the biggest thing that people are not talking about, is that you're exactly right, John. Like, I don't think the Big 12's stable enough. Like, I don't know. Would it be a situation where these teams make a jump from the American to the Big 12, and maybe the Big 12 may not be in existence 3 years from now? Like, who knows? Like, I feel like I'll agree. I think going to the Pac-12 would be a way better option for Houston. It's, like I said, more stability. I think they might even have a little bit or a better chance to be a little bit more dominant soon. But I don't know.
But you also don't know that they're going to get that invite to the Pac-12 or any other conference for that matter. So maybe they just, if they see the Big 12 as a step up from the American, they say, all right, we're going to jump at this. And I mean, hey, by all means, no lines have been signed here. So you could see the Pac-12 if they really want Houston. Maybe they'll swoop in the next few days and try to get that going as well. So.
Hey, well, good luck to Houston in the Big 12. When you can't even beat Texas Tech, you get, crapped upon by 17 points on a neutral site game. So good luck to Houston. I wonder. Yeah, I mean, that's just being real, guys. I mean, if you can't beat one of the doormat programs in that league, then good luck. I mean, I don't know. But one quick team that I didn't think about, that we left out of the AAC discussion earlier, and I want to give them kudos, is Southern Miss too. That team, they've been one of the founding members of Conference USA, with UAB. So, I mean, if they can get it together in football and some, other sports, then maybe they can make that move too. But, guys, let's go ahead and go over our hashtag G5 over P5 victories this week for week 1. And, guys, we had 5 of them. Charlotte beat Duke 31-28 Friday night. Northern Illinois. I'm so excited for that program. 22-21 over Georgia Tech, because when we did our MAC preview for them, I mean, we were kind of like, well, I was like, this program is just dead. I mean, they looked like they were going in the wrong direction, and look at them going to Atlanta and getting that W. So good for Northern Illinois. UTSA getting the victory over Illinois 37-30. I gave that the Sunday headline last week that UTSA was definitely going to get that victory in Illinois, and they proved me right. So good for the Roadrunners and Jeff Traylor getting that W over Illinois. Nevada getting the 22-17 win over Cal, and I believe none of us can say we were surprised about that, because this Nevada team is very strong, and hey, they might even get another P5 victory in a couple weeks. In a couple weeks. And the last, Utah State. How about Anderson going on his first game coaching the Aggies, getting the win in Pullman 26-23 over Washington State. And, guys, I don't know if our listeners remember, but I want to go back to our Mountain West preview when we talked about Utah State. And I said, hey, we agreed that we wouldn't be shocked to get that upset. And, they didn't prove us wrong. They went in there into Pullman and got that victory over Washington State. So good for them. So we had 5 G5 over P5 victories, and we also had a bunch of close calls. I mean, we almost had more victories. Tulane lost to Oklahoma 40-35. Fresno State lost to Oregon 31-24, but Josh was right about his headline. They kept it close and almost had a chance to pull it out of Eugene. Rice lost to Arkansas 38-17. Now, you guys might say, but that's 21-point difference. Guys, Rice led that game late and just had a fourth quarter implosion, and just Arkansas just dominated, but Rice really dominated 3/4 of that game.
Sure did.
The next game, also a Conference USA team, Louisiana Tech, blew that game against Mississippi State 35-34. They had a 20-point lead late in the second half. Sorry to our guys over at Go Tech. Please don't die, because unfortunately Louisiana Tech did go and they died. Central Michigan, without their head coach, had a very close game at Missouri, losing 34-24. Shout out to the Chippewas playing without Coach McElwain. We want to send our prayers and thoughts towards him. Hopefully he's making a speedy recovery. And Texas State barely lost to Baylor at home, 29-20. So, guys, we had a lot of good G5 action this past week. We're not going to even mention those terrible FCS upsets that we saw. But Group of Five looked very strong in week one. Do you guys have any overall impressions or anything you want to talk about in particular in regards to any of those games we mentioned?
I mean, I thought G5 looked really strong this week, and I didn't think the SEC looked that strong, but that was my opinion. Other than, I mean, we had some big wins, but I know that's a Power 5 school. But the way these G5 teams played some of these SEC teams, I think it was a huge statement for the Group of Five this week.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And honestly, I mean, just looking over these games here, I'm just looking at them here, and I'm like, okay, man, I'm seeing 4 Conference USA teams. And, generally I'm a Sun Belt guy, and the Sun Belt had an awesome year last year. But, man, Charlotte's on there beating Duke, and that's their first ever Power 5 victory. That was a big deal. That was, played locally at UNC Charlotte there. UTSA beat Illinois. You had Rice barely losing to Arkansas, and La Tech barely losing to Miss State. So big weekend for CUSA there.
Definitely. And then one game that I just thought about for Conference USA is, how about Marshall beating that ass 49-7 at Navy? Good grief.
That's right. I know.
Insane. I don't know. We might need to see what's going on down there at Navy with Niumatalolo, because they didn't look too great last year and already off to a rough start. But good job with Coach Huff and his first game in Marshall. So good for the Thundering Herd and getting that victory and a dominating effort on the road. But definitely shout out to Conference USA, looking a lot better than they did last year for sure. And I just hope that trend continues. But guys, we've got a really big slate of games for you for week 2. I mean, this week might be even better than week 1. But we want to start out with our G5 Beat game of the week that we ask you guys to vote on our Twitter. Again, if you're not following us on Twitter, please give us a follow at twitter.com/theg5beat. And every Sunday during the season, we're going to have a poll Sunday morning where we ask you to pick one of the 4 games. And the game that has the most votes, we're going to preview in the next week's episode. So this week, congratulations to Western Kentucky and Army. That's going to be our G5 Beat game of the week, where the Hilltoppers travel down to Army to take on the Knights. This will be a 10:30 a.m. So make sure you got your coffee with you and some breakfast. Maybe get some eggs and bacon. This is going to be an early start to the day. This will be televised on the CBS Sports Network, but they did do this on purpose because if you are unaware, this Saturday is going to be the 20th anniversary of 9/11. So I mean, I know they've got something great prepared, for that game and across all the games in the country. We'll not going to get into a long talk about what happened 20 years ago. We all know what happened on that day on 9/11 20 years ago. But the Hilltoppers coming to Army, coming off of a very, dominating win over UT Martin, Tennessee Martin. And right now the spread is Army is a 6.5 point favorite. So as of now, but WKU looked dominant, in that. It was an FCS opponent, but guys, lately or before this year, Western Kentucky's kind of struggled with those FCS games. But so good for them and just getting the big win. Starting the season 1-0, and that offense looked as good as advertised with Zappy and company. Just dominating effort over Tennessee Martin. Now Army, they had a dominating performance as well, going down and taking on Sun Belt opponent Georgia State. And I mean, they pretty much whipped up on Georgia State, on all 3 sides of the ball, offense, defense, and special teams, just forcing a bunch of turnovers and converting them into points. And I mean, Georgia State just could not stop that ground attack, from Army this past Saturday. So, guys, what's your thoughts on this game? But I think it's going to be a hell of a game down at Army.
Josh, you got it first.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty good game. I'm curious to see, if Western Kentucky can run the ball a little bit better. I think that's going to be important in this game. I really don't have any strong particular feelings one way or another. I actually think Army will probably come out on top of this game, but the offense, like you said, John, was as advertised, had almost 600 yards of offense last week, and really, really did a great job throwing that ball around the field. Defense did give up 400 yards, 200 yards of that on the ground, which has me a little concerned going against this Army team. But I think it's gonna be a dogfight. I think it's gonna be one of the trenches, but that's why I give Army the edge.
Yeah, so for me, first thing I want to say before I start there, just to clarify, I know, John, you mentioned that game's at 10:30, just for all you guys listening so that we can make sure we're on it. That's 10:30 Central Time. So whatever time zone you're in, just keep that in mind there. Also taking a quick look at it, too. The series there all time, it's 3-0 Western Kentucky lead, and those are all recent games. I know it's different teams, but their most recent one was back in 2019 in Bowling Green, so just keep that in mind there. Right now, the biggest thing that I'm seeing with Western Kentucky, I like these Houston Baptist transfers, man. Like, they look legit. Bailey Zappi, like you mentioned, dude killed it. 424 yards and 7 touchdowns.
7 touchdowns, yeah.
Right.
And let's not also forget Jared Stearns, one of the receivers that came with him. Dude caught 7 balls for $107 right there and 2 touchdowns. Like, you look at him, you look at Zappi, you're like, all right, that's a spark for the offense there. And their offense wasn't amazing last year. So, I mean, if they can get something going there, they just need a little something from the rush attack so they're not so one-dimensional. But, I mean, if they can do it, look out for those guys, man. Also on top of it, I know, Josh, you mentioned the rushing issue they had last week. I worry about that because, I mean, what's Army do? They're a triple option.
Run the ball, yeah.
Yeah, they're a triple option team. So, and that's my biggest deal with looking at Army saying, okay, they killed Georgia State this past week. I think they rushed for like 258 yards is what I saw. And honestly, their defense was pretty stout too. They held Georgia State to under 200 total yards, I think. I don't know what the exact number was, but you look at that, and I know they had a guy on defense that had 3 sacks just by himself on Saturday against Georgia State. I'm worried about it for Western Kentucky. I mean, listen, Georgia State, a lot of people saw them as a pretty legit team this year that could make some noise, and Army went out and took it to them. I know WKU did what they did to an FCS team, but, this is a whole nother beast here, and it's at Army. Those guys are motivated. If anything, for the fact that, like you said, like, it's September 11th. It's a big day for the military there. So I say Army steps up, and I like Army in this game.
I agree. And looking at Army's defense last week against Georgia State, to your point, they only total yards allowed, pulling it up, 177 yards, only allowed 48 yards on the ground, 129 yards through the air. I mean, I think it's going to be all in the trenches, defensive line, offensive line, who's going to control that game. And if Western Kentucky comes out giving up 4, 5, 6, 7 yards a carry, it's going to be a long day for them. And I think, you cannot underestimate this 20-year anniversary, I feel like, of September 11th with Army. I know that I feel like that's stereotypical, but I think it's going to be huge. It's going to be big. It's going to be hype. It's going to be a great atmosphere.
Yeah, very, very tough spot for the Hilltoppers to come into to play that game. But I'll be the lone wolf. I like WKU in this spot. I'm really impressed with this offense. And, going back to our Conference USA preview we did before the season, I'm confident in this Hilltopper defense. Now, yes, it does kind of concern me a little bit with the rushing numbers allowed in the UT Martin game. But I do think they'll step it up this week. And also, I like the speed of the Hilltopper offense, compared to the Army defense. I think that WKU should be able to just kind of sling it around and take advantage of those skill positions against an Army defense. So I like Western. I like it a close game, but I do like Western Kentucky coming out on top for the Hilltoppers 24-21 in that game. So definitely looking forward to seeing what happens in that game. Our second game of the week is the Memphis Tigers going down to Jonesboro, Arkansas to take on Arkansas State. This game will be a 6 p.m. Central Time kickoff on ESPN Plus. Right now, it looks like Memphis is a very slight 5-point favorite, a road favorite at Arkansas State. Now, watching Arkansas State this past week, they did get the victory over in-state foe, Central Arkansas. But guys, it was a close battle. I mean, the final score, looked like a very lopsided victory for Arkansas State. But I mean, this was close. Arkansas State was only leading 20-14 heading into the fourth quarter. But I definitely want to give a shout out to Corey Rucker, the wide receiver for Arkansas State, had a huge game for Arkansas State this past Saturday against Central Arkansas. 3 touchdown catches. I mean, that dude, he was a beast. Nine catches total for 138 yards and 3 touchdowns. Just looked very dominating, against that Central Arkansas defense. Now, on the Memphis side, they did get a victory over Nichols, 42-17. The run game, as always with Memphis, looked really good. And in fact, in the first half, they scored on all 6 of their offensive series. So good for the Tigers. One thing I do want to see improvement on from the Memphis side is that a lot of field goals. I mean, they kicked 4 field goals in that game. When you're taking a step up in competition, I'd like to see you convert in the red zone and try to get touchdowns as opposed to field goals. Because if you start kicking a lot of field goals in tougher competition, I mean, you might not do as well as you'd like. So I definitely like to see that improve on the red zone offense for the Memphis Tigers. But it should be a hell of a game. These guys played last year. It was a relatively close game in our very weird COVID year last year. But what are you guys seeing out of this Memphis Arkansas State game?
Baker, you go ahead.
All right, cool. All right, so first and foremost here, I got to say this. Did you boys know that this is a rivalry game and this is a trophy game, name game, all of that? Were you aware?
I actually did not know that.
Did not know that.
I mean, these guys are close. This is the Paint Bucket Bowl. And let me tell you a quick story about the Paint Bucket Bowl, just for all you listening. The Paint Bucket Bowl, these 2 schools used to pass around a paint bucket that school officials literally got from like Lowe's or somewhere, and they put paint in it just like the color of the 2 schools, and the winner just got to smear paint on their can. Yeah, and that's literally all it was. Well, guess what? Basically, somebody got tired of it. Somebody got tired of them defacing the school, and somebody stole the paint bucket. So ever since then, it's not really the Paint Bucket Bowl anymore because they don't have a paint bucket to pass around for the winner. But hey, that's the history of the rivalry. With that said, these guys, they've played like 53 times, so it gets fairly heated. They played last year and Memphis won. They've got like a 2-game win streak on them right now. Looking at schools, like you said, man, Memphis, they killed it last week, 587 yards on offense, but, it's against Nichols, so it's not saying too much. But they had 322 yards rushing, and, I mean, that's pretty darn impressive. But keep in mind, you kind of take the pedal off of the gas when it comes to passing in games like that against FCS schools if you're maybe up pretty big. So I wouldn't overthink that rushing number, but keep an eye out for that ground game for Memphis there, because if they can keep moving the ball like that, they're going to have a hell of a year. I would say that, just taking a look at them real quick, Javon Ivory and Calvin Austin, those are the guys to watch through the air. They should have big games here in this one because the A-State defense has never been really good, especially against the pass. And I think that's going to hold true again this year. I think they're going to be more of an offensive team. The issue with A-State, though, who are you going to play quarterback, man? Is it Blackman or is it Hatcher? They did the same thing last year, and now they're right back into it this year. And last year it worked out for them, but listen, you don't have the same guys, and I feel like that's a problem. You got to eventually make a decision there. I get Blackman can scramble a little bit, but honestly, from what I'm hearing, I think a lot of the A-State contingent's still high on Hatcher, so we'll see what they do there. Because they haven't necessarily figured out what they're going to do there. And because the Memphis offense looks so stout, even though Memphis maybe not, they're not supposed to have the year that they've maybe had in the past where they're like, top team in the American, I've got Memphis winning that game. I think they're going to be too strong for A-State.
Yeah, I'm kind of right there with you, Baker. I think definitely in this game, they can't afford to play the merry-go-round with quarterbacks. I think they're just going to have to make a decision and kind of go for it. I kind of lean towards Hatcher. But I think a lot will depend on kind of how that offensive line holds up against Memphis's defensive line. I don't think Arkansas State's defense is going to put up that much of a fight. I think they will get better as the season goes along under Mike McIntyre. But, I mean, giving up almost 300 yards in the air last week, I think that Hennigan's going to have a hell of a game against that defense. I think it'll be kind of a higher scoring game. I do like Memphis. I think just coming into this game, it just feels right. I'm big on my gut. My gut says Memphis, and I'm just going to take them.
Agreed on the high scoring game. And honestly, I do. And I think you guys kind of said this too in our Sunbelt preview show. Like, I think Arkansas State's going to click maybe at some point. I just don't think it's going to be this game. I don't think it's going to be yet. But if for some reason they do pull it off, watch out, man. I think the Red Wolves, they're going to take flight at some point this year.
I agree.
Yeah, I agree too. I think it will take a few more games for it to click for the Red Wolves. But in this game, I like Memphis by double digits. Memphis is just going to be too much for the Arkansas State defense, I think. But
I could see it even being close at first, kind of a shootout back and forth. But I think that depth on Memphis is going to prove a little bit stronger. And to Baker's point, I think they will get it going at some point. I don't think it'd be this early in the season. And, a lot's been said about Butch Jones at Tennessee, but sometimes I kind of wish I think they kind of wish they still had him relative to recent history. I think he will get it going, and I think Arkansas State fans have a lot to look forward to.
Definitely. Well, our next game that we want to preview for you guys, and I'm gonna let these two gentlemen mainly talk about this preview, but it's going to be App State travels down to Miami to take on the Hurricanes. That'll be Saturday night at 6 p.m. Central Time, kickoff on ESPNU. Right now, Miami is a 7.5-point favorite. But which one of you guys want to take this first? Because I know, App, Baker with App, and I know, Josh, you did a lot of, watching for Miami to get ready for the Alabama game this past week, and you saw, Miami play. So which one of you guys want to take it away to start us off?
Go for it, Josh.
All right. So coming from the Miami side, De'Aaron King is not 100% healthy.
Yeah,
he didn't look like it that game. And the thing that really got me, with his play on that game is that there was a lot of times Alabama plays a lot of man-on-man coverage. There's a lot of times he probably could have taken. And it looked like he was afraid to pull that trigger and kind of run the ball because, there'd be kind of, it'd be 10 yards open field in front of him, and he just wouldn't do it. And so I feel like he's still a little hesitant because of that injury. I don't think he's playing the greatest ball. Offensive line didn't look strong. Granted, the pass rush for Alabama was also was exceptional. They also couldn't run the ball. However, I think given who their opponent was, I think they'll have a little bit better time going forward in the season. No offense to any other team they play, but I think Chase Bryce definitely has the skill necessary with his to come in, and I think he's going to have some success against that Miami defense. There were some holes. Alabama was breaking in a ton of new receivers, and there was holes to be found there. And I think Appalachian State has offensive guys that I think they can get some separation. I think they'll be able to move the ball. I think they'll be able to run it. I do think Miami will win, and they can be a little bit they'll come in with a chip on their shoulder, have something to prove. But I don't think it's going to be a blowaway game by any means. I don't think De'Aaron King, I think he'll play all right, but I have not seen enough of him. He's not the De'Aaron King at Houston his first year where he just dominated, there's a lot left to be seen from him. And also, I'm not a big Manny Diaz fan. I've never been a big fan of his defenses, so I think Arkansas. I think Appalachian State's going to come in and rack up some yards. I see Miami just kind of pulling away in the fourth quarter. Really, probably win by 10, 14 points, but I really think it's going to be a pretty good game.
Josh, you were doing so good, and then you said Appalachian. Come on.
Oh, listen, I'm sorry. I'm going to put $1 in the jar. I'm sorry.
You're good, man. Nah, listen, I mean, it's interesting to hear you talk about De'Aaron King there, because I think that is going to be a big deal in this game. Like, I mean, you look at App's history and the Power 5 teams we faced, it's kind of an unknown how we're going to do against a Power 5 team that has a true, dual threat speedster back there, because really, I mean, 5 of our 8 P5 games we've had the past, I don't know, since 2015, since we've moved up, have been against really solid teams. And quite frankly, none of them, I mean, they were all drop back passers. None of them really had, guys, except, Clemson, they weren't one of the 5, but Clemson had Deshaun Watson back in 2015. But can you really consider him dual threat? He did everything. I mean, he's just a stud. But the thing is, we haven't really faced a guy like that. And I don't know what we would do, because defensively, if you look at us, yeah, we've got speed, but do we have that kind of speed? I don't know. Plus, we play a 3-4 defense, so you're having to come from the from the second tier there and pull guys up just to kind of get there. Because let's be honest, Miami's offensive line, they're bigger than our guys. So I think the really interesting matchup there with App's defense versus Miami's offense is going to be a lot of pre-snap stuff there. And we did a lot of this against ECU, but it's going to be a lot of, moving guys around, maybe a lot of blitzes, that kind of thing, trying to trick their O-line. And I know you mentioned this a little bit, but Miami's offensive line, they struggled a little bit with Alabama. Now, granted, App's not Alabama, but I know that Miami had to replace their right tackle, I believe it was. I know they've updated their depth chart for this week to show the new right tackle in there. So it's interesting to see them switching around offensive linemen. That makes me salivate as a coach there if I'm looking at that. But I mean, man, look, both teams speed, man, quick all around. But the thing is, Miami speed is a whole nother level from App speed. So it's going to take more than just what App does, on a regular basis to win this game, if you're looking at it. And that's the biggest issue I see. Now, when you look a little more at App, I do think that App has a lot to throw at them. You kind of saw that in the ECU game. And like you mentioned earlier, they kind of maybe took the brakes off a little bit earlier when they got up and had the game in control. I would like to say that I expect App to open the playbook a little more. It's interesting. Our offensive coordinator, he's actually from Miami. He's a Miami guy himself. Didn't go to Miami, but just born and raised in South Beach. So he wants to win that game. That's his recruiting territory down there in Miami. App came out, Sean Clark, the head coach, came out today and said, we're going to send some guys down there to recruit on Thursday and Friday this week in South Florida. It's a big deal for us. So it's exciting, but when I look at it, I say when you compare speed on speed, and that's what we do, I don't like our matchup with them. I think we do better against big physical teams because we can get by them with our speed. But when you have to throw us against another team that uses speed like that, I don't like it. And if you look back at our recent Power 5 games, like Miami's really the only team since we moved up to FBS back in 2015. They're the only team that's really blown us out. Georgia beat us fairly good, but I mean, that was the year Georgia lost in the national championship to Alabama. So it's kind of a different story. So I don't love our matchup here. I'll just leave it at that.
All right. And real quick, Baker, you're planning on making the trip down to Miami, right?
I am making the trip. Yeah, I'll be flying down Friday night, so I'm looking forward to it. First time going to South Beach.
I'm just I agree with everything Baker's saying. I think App State will find a way to have some success on the offensive side. I really do. I think I think the speed is going to be a pretty big thing. I think ultimately it's probably why Miami wins, but I think there's going to be some holes. And like just looking over last week's stat sheet, Garrett King he rushed 9 times, only had 10 yards. But there's times where he could have taken off and gained a whole lot more. He's just not reading the field right, I don't think. I think he's a little gun shy. He did get a little tweak last week, so I think that's going to play into your hands very, very well. And I don't know. I think it's going to be a good game.
One other quick note, too, our starting strong safety, Nick Ross, he received a targeting call in the second half of the ECU game, so he will miss the first half, which could be a big deal in this game.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
Real quick, I just wanted to add, you guys pretty much summed it up very well, but I just wanted to add that one thing that is real is that the teams that play Alabama, that next week, man, they're kind of tired and worn out, like kind of fatigued. So, hey, maybe App can catch them because, App's got a couple more nights sleep, since they played last Thursday. So, hey, maybe App can catch them. And the other thing I wanted to mention for sure is that, and I should have mentioned this earlier when we recapped the ECU App game, but I was really Chase Bryce looked good, and I thought he looked great. I knew he was going to be, from what Baker was telling us about how he was doing in fall camp. I was like, okay, he might be decent. He looked good. You look at his stats: 20 of 27 for 259 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now he did have the 1 interception, but he threw a couple of dimes in that game, and I was very impressed with Chase Bryce.
And that interception too, Sean Clark, the head coach, he came out in his post game and said that was on me. Ponce, the offensive coordinator, he wanted to run a different play, and Sean Clark wanted to go for the knockout punch, and he made Chase throw that into coverage. Yeah, he got the pick. So really, the guy hardly had any incompletions. He threw a good ball all night. It was definitely good.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think it'll continue.
Good. Well, guys, we do have one more final game that we're going to preview for week 2. And that's going to be the Mean Green of North Texas travel down to take on the SMU Mustangs. That'll be a Saturday night game, also at 6 p.m. All these 6 o'clock games. 6 p.m. Central Time. This will be televised on ESPN+. And right now, SMU is a 22-point favorite. Now, guys, I'm going to be honest with you, our listeners. Part of us thought about not even wanting to preview this game because of the spread and how we thought, these guys might feel the same way that SMU is going to run away with it. But I really wanted this game on the preview because I just think this is such an important game for North Texas and Seth Luttrell. And this, to them, it's a rivalry game. If you ask an SMU fan, they might argue with you and say, well, it's not a rivalry game. We don't even pay attention to North Texas. But if North Texas can get in there and somehow get a win, that would be huge for Seth Luttrell and that team in North Texas. But also, hey, if we're rolling with Conference USA, how they played this past week, hey, anything can happen this week. And we'll definitely see if North Texas can catch SMU sleeping this week. Kind of looking at what North Texas did this past Saturday. They faced a FCS foe, Northwestern State. DeAndre Torrey went off at the running back position, 25 carries for 244 yards and 3 touchdowns. He looked really good. The defense, fortunately, did give up some points and some yardage to Northwestern State. So they're definitely, if you go back to our Conference USA preview, we've been saying from the get-go that North Texas has to improve this defense. So the defense has to, and they're going to have to show a lot of improvement against this SMU offense, but we'll get to them in a minute. But the defense has to show improvement for North Texas to have a chance in this ball game. Going back to what they did against Northwestern State, North Texas did have to kick 3 field goals in this game. And again, kind of what I hit on earlier with Memphis is you got to take advantage when you get into the red zone. Now, especially if you're taking on an offensive team like the SMU Mustangs, you've got to get touchdowns when you can. You can't just settle for field goals. So they're going to have to improve their red zone offense this week. Now, on the other side of the ball, guys, it's SMU. The last couple of years we've seen under Sonny Dykes, they can sling it around. They do have a new quarterback. Tanner Mordecai.
But he only threw 7 touchdowns last week.
7 touchdowns. 24 of 30 for 317 yards and 7 touchdowns. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they beat Abilene Christian, which is an FCS team, 56-9. But I mean, it looked like that offense didn't skip a beat under Mordecai. He looked fantastic. So, what are you guys' thoughts on this game?
Wait, real quick too. Can we just say this? Didn't Tanner Mordecai come from OU?
Oh, hold on.
Oh, did he? That does sound right.
No, he did. I just looked it up. He transferred from Oklahoma. How many dang quarterbacks in there does Oklahoma have? They are loaded with studs in their quarterback room every year. I tell you.
Hey, speaking of Oklahoma, real quick, did y'all see the college football meme where what's his name? Lincoln Riley was shaking the quarterback of Tulane's hand, and he said, "Hey, want to transfer over here?" I said, "Golly," but they just develop quarterbacks. I mean,
I just want to say that Alabama has 3 starting quarterbacks from the same team starting in the NFL right now. But other than that,
okay, Josh,
just had to throw that in there.
Just a little factoid. Just say we should be in the conversation, but Oklahoma can develop quarterbacks.
There you go. But I mean, guys, this SMU offense looks. I mean, they look. Like I said, they hadn't skipped a beat. Like, I thought they would maybe take a step back, but and I know, I mean, you don't want to overreact to, I mean, it's Abilene Christian. I mean, come on now. But 7 touchdowns, I mean, my God, he looked great.
Yeah, no, he looked good. I mean, again, you don't want to look too much into it because it's Abilene Christian. But I don't. It's a very hard path for North Texas to win this game, in my opinion.
It is.
It's just if they would have to find a way to slow down Tanner Mordecai and that offensive juggernaut they got going over there, and I just don't see them slowing down enough, and just I don't know really what else to say. It's going to be a tough battle. I think it is, to your point, John, a big game for North Texas, and I think that there's a lot can be said that they lose this game and how they lose this game. But I see SMU kind of pulling away with this.
So real quick on my end, before I start, again, this is another game, another rivalry game. Doesn't have a trophy, but has a name to it, the Safeway Bowl, and it's named because of Coach Matt Simon from North Texas in 1994. The guy said, "I'd like to play because I think we could beat them, and my players feel the same way. If they'd like to play on a Safeway parking lot, just give us a date and time." Guess what, Matt Simon? I don't think that's the case this year. I'm going with what the boys are saying. Tanner Mordecai, dude's killing it. North Texas still doesn't have a defense, and the one thing I don't think I heard mentioned here, Chase Rudder, man, or Chase.
He had 3. I meant to mention that he had 2 picks last
21, 131 yards, 1 touchdown
against Northwestern State.
Northwestern State, and by the way, they brought in Austin Awney, the guy that played a good bit last year, and he was 2 of 5 for 51 yards. So no touchdowns, no interceptions. So not much better. You're telling me you don't have a defense, you don't have quarterback play. Yeah, you got a running back who killed it, but okay, SMU stack the box and go on with your bad self with your offense that continues killing it, and you're going to run them out of the water. That's the way I see it.
So y'all both see a blowout?
I both see it. Yeah, unless DeAndre Torrey can get rolling like he did and kind of take some of the air out of the ball and kind of take the opportunity that SMU has in scoring. But to Baker's point, just load the box and see if Rudder can beat you, and I don't think he can. I mean, if he can't beat Northwestern State, I don't see a way that he's going to beat SMU.
Yeah, losing Jaden Darden really hurt them.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. And earlier I did say, I kind of crapped on the North Texas defense, but they did shut them out in the second half. They only gave up 14 points total, so maybe some improvement. I mean, I know it's Northwestern State, but I don't know. They definitely not going to hold SMU to 14 points this week.
Nah, maybe in the first quarter to 14 points. Sorry, North Texas.
They shut them out. Northwestern State rushed for 261 yards. So, I mean, that's a lot for Northwestern State to rush. I'm just being honest. So.
Well, we'll see. I've got faith that North Texas can somewhat keep it close and maybe cover that 22-point spread. But we'll definitely see. Like I said, that definitely is a rivalry game, but very, very important for North Texas. If somehow they can pull it out and get the W, that would be great for Luttrell and company. But guys, before we move on to our headline Sunday headline segment. We do want to let you guys know what we are going to definitely preview for next week's slate of games. We do have 3 games picked out that we're definitely going to hit on. And also we've got 4 games that we're going to put on the G5 Beat Game of the Week Twitter poll. Josh, do you want to tell us about those games?
Yeah, so we'll have the Twitter poll again coming out on Sunday for the beat of the week for us to cover on our week 3 preview. So the options will be Memphis taking on Mississippi State. We got Coastal Carolina taking on Buffalo, UCF taking on Louisville, and Arkansas State taking on Washington, especially after Washington looked last week. That game is definitely a little bit more interesting. So that will be on our Twitter poll at the G5 Beat on Twitter on Sunday for 24 hours. So make sure you share it, and, put a vote on, and let us know anything else you got for us to talk about. Just send us a message or tweet at us or whatever you want to do.
Definitely. And we do already have our 3 games we're definitely going to preview for you guys next week. We're going to definitely preview Ohio at Louisiana, Oklahoma State at Boise State, and Fresno State at UCLA. So another good slate of games next week, but we did choose those 3, and we need you guys to help us pick that 4th game. So definitely follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/TheG5Beat and cast your vote. But guys, this is our probably one of our favorite segments where we pick our Sunday headlines that we'll see coming out Sunday morning. And I'll go ahead and you don't have to have one each week if you do share it. If not, but I do have one that I want to share with everybody, and that headline is going to be Blazers stun Georgia in Athens. I know a lot of people are rolling their eyes. But I don't know if you guys seen the injuries coming out of Georgia. They've got, unfortunately, and I hate to see that, but this just came out this morning that they've got looks like a scare and COVID protocol in Georgia. They might have some guys out. And hey, UAB, we've got the line on the defensive side of the ball and the offensive line that maybe we can keep it close. It is kind of wishful thinking that we will be able to pull the W, but if we can keep it respectable and close, hey, I'll take that all day.
Yeah, maybe they're coming off that high and just kind of coasting in this game. It was a tough game Georgia had this past weekend, so maybe.
Your offense better get right if they're going to take that Georgia defense with how they were looking on Saturday night.
Yeah, you're right. Hey, you're right about that, Baker, for sure. So I hope that we'll be able to have a good offensive performance down in Athens. But Josh and I, guys, me and Josh will actually be in Athens for the UAB Georgia game. So looking forward to that. Guys, do y'all have a headline? I know we didn't talk about right before we record, but
mine will be also regarding the upset of an SEC team.
Oh,
my headline will be Pillaging Pirates. ECU takes on South Carolina. South Carolina did look good this past week. Granted, they have a graduate assistant quarterback. He did throw 4 touchdowns. But I think ECU is going to come into this game after App State, and I think they're going to come in motivated. I think there's a little bit of an oversell on the South Carolina part, and I really kind of see South Carolina kind of coasted in this game, and I think the ECU is poised to take opportunity here and take it by the horns and not dominate, but I think they can win.
I love it. G5 over P5.
Baker, G5 over P5.
You got one, bud?
I do, and just real quick comment on that. I really do think ECU is on the right track. I really like what they've got going on, and like you said, that's a noon kick Eastern time, 11 o'clock Central. It's an early kick, and that would honestly be for ECU fans. You know this. That's like a classic ECU move to drop a game like they did week 1 and then come back and beat a team the next week. So,
exactly.
Yeah, it's Dowdy Ficklin. That place should be rocking. So I like the pick. My pick this week. Bulls feeling corny. I like the Buffalo Bulls going to Nebraska and taking out the Cornhuskers. Is that a huge upset? I don't know, but it's still a G5 over P5. It's another nail in Scott Freeze's grave of leaving Nebraska, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Scott Freeze. You say Freezy?
Wait, what did I say?
Scott
You
Freeze?
said Scott Freeze. You freeze.
It sounds like a Batman villain.
Dude,
Freeze. Hey, Freeze, Frost, same thing.
Yeah, same thing. Yeah. Hey, he'll be joining Randy
at the Frost, man. Hey, he's something cold. That's all I know.
He'll be in the unemployment line with Edsel here soon.
Yeah, listen. Buffalo took it to Wagner this week. Not that Wagner's any good, but listen, Buffalo continues to roll right along. Love what they're doing. Nebraska, they opened up the year with a loss to Illinois in week 0. Yeah, they took out Fordham this week, but they haven't looked amazing to me. They're looking like the same old Nebraska, and the same old Nebraska that we've known, they're vulnerable to decent G5 teams. So I say Buffalo goes right on in there, and they leave with the W.
I love it. Well, all right, guys, it's been an hour. So thank you so much, for listening to us here at the G5 Beat, and hope that you enjoyed it. And if you do, definitely make sure that you're subscribed to us on a podcast platform, whether that be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are listening to us now. Go ahead and hit that subscribe or follow button, and make sure to spread the word and tell a friend or two about us. But on that note, guys, I hope you enjoy watching another week of football, and we'll be back next week to recap and get you ready for week 3.